Hello, everyone. Thanks for joining and welcome back to Wall Street Silver. Our guest today is the commodities investing legend, my good friend, founder of Rule Investment Media, Rick Rule, and also the former CEO of Sprott. I forgot to mention that.
Thank you, Ivan. Delighted to talk to you. Delighted to talk to your audience again.
Yeah, it's such a huge pleasure having you come back to Wall Street Silver, Rick. Your knowledge is super valuable and everyone's interested to hear, especially what's happening with silver and gold right now. We're watching it really close. So what's your outlook right now? People are saying, gold's hitting all-time highs. We're watching the Fed closely. What are you seeing right now, Rick?
Well, let's get this straight. Gold is hitting new all-time highs in nominal terms, not inflation-adjusted terms. I think that the gold market is, as we described it the last time you and I talked, a coiled spring. And I think it's wrong, at least from my own viewpoint, as an old guy, uh, to think of gold as a speculative element. I think you think of gold as an insurance element.
Right.
You may not recall, but the last time you and I talked, I said that I didn't own gold because I thought it might go from 1,950 to 2,110.
Hmm.
I owned it because I thought it might go over 5 years to 8,000 or 9,000 or 10,000, at least in nominal terms, based on the declining purchasing power of the US dollar. I continue to believe that the momentum must be established by gold. The narrative has to be established by gold. If that happens, and I believe it will, experience tells me that silver will move later, but silver will move further and silver
Hmm.
will move faster. I own silver in the speculative part of my portfolio. I own gold in the insurance part of my portfolio. So I hope that helps. Could this be a false start in gold? Sure, absolutely. And you have to organize your portfolio to understand that you might be early.
Yeah,
Uh,
a lot of people are sorry for cutting you off. Is they're saying, why is gold taking off, but silver's still lagging right now? Is it because it's the industrial metal or why?
that's historical.
Yeah.
Gold, precious metals bull markets have, for the 50 years that I've been watching them, been led by fear. The predominant ethos of the 1970s gold bull market was at once the deregulation in the US of the gold price, but also the fear of the policy of guns and butter, the
Hmm.
fear of the depreciation of the purchasing power of the US dollar. Similarly, the 2000 gold bull market, led off by fears in a decline of the purchasing power of US dollar denominated savings, which has occurred again. In my experience, and I can't tell you why, sadly, Ivan, in my experience, silver moves later. The momentum has to be established by gold. The last movers of all are the silver stocks. Silver has to move before the silver stocks move. As we've discussed before, the market capitalization of the legitimate silver stocks in the market is so small that when and if the generalist money comes into them, as Doug Casey so inelegantly says, it's like siphoning Hoover Dam through a garden hose. I'm not trying to be inflammatory with my speech. What I'm trying to say is that if past is prologue, it will pay you to wait, because when the silver stocks do move, they likely will make up for all of the trauma that they have caused you up until that point.
Yeah, there's a lot of trauma, especially watching silver go up and down and people, putting all their time and their effort into it. What do you look at, Rick? Because this is super important to our audience as well. What do you look at before you even step into a silver gold mining company, either it's exploration or producing? What do you look at for their books, their team, their management? How do you know that's the right one?
In the smaller companies, it's all about people.
Hmm.
And have they been successful before? And have they been successful in a task that closely resembles the task at hand? If somebody has been successful operating a gold mine in French speaking Quebec, and what they're doing now is exploring for silver in accreted terrain in Spanish speaking Peru, the prior success isn't necessarily relevant to the task at hand.
Right.
So I want somebody who is familiar with the geographic and geologic environment that they're already working in. If
Hmm.
you have a more mature company, which is to say the deposit's already been found, the first thing I want is scope and scale. Uh, Really, for me, the minimum target size or the minimum reality is 100 million ounces of recoverable reserves and resources. I'm not interested in small mines. What I
Yeah.
found is that small mines have all the risks of big mines, but they can only ever make you small money. And the idea that I
Mhm.
would take a big risk for a small reward is sort of silly. I also want at least a target, but preferably a reality that will be in the best quartile in the industry in terms of return on capital employed, certainly over 25%, and the lowest quartile in terms of all-in sustaining cost. Because remember, in the silver business, most silver is produced as an adjunct to
Yeah.
base metals mines, which means that the production costs are very, very, very low for most silver production. Most silver production simply involves the recovery of silver from the waste stream.
Hmm.
So primary silver producers have to be extraordinarily efficient. And while there's an argument that you would buy a high-cost producer because their margins would expand more rapidly with an increasing silver price, for me personally, that's too risky a strategy.
Right.
I did it in the early part of the 90s. It worked, but then the silver price was too stupidly depressed. I want quality now in the silver space.
Yeah, so you're looking quality over quantity, and you're looking obviously for a team that already knows their jurisdiction if it's a smaller type of mine, and if it's bigger, then you can handle the risk.
Jurisdiction and geology. If
Yeah.
somebody's background is Archean geology, and all of a sudden they're looking in accreted terrain in tertiary volcanics, the success that they enjoyed in an Archean terrain
Won't
is
be the
not
same.
necessarily technically transferable
Yeah.
to accreted tertiary terrain.
So I just wanted to let everyone know about our new sponsor, Strategic Wealth Preservation. They are an international precious metals dealer, and they are a secured storage provider that have headquarters in the Cayman Islands. The company owns and operates a large Class 3 UL rated vault in the Grand Caymans, and they offer other strategic locations as part of its global storage network. They specialize in the acquisition, secure storage, and liquidation of precious metals for individuals, companies, trusts, and wealth management professionals on behalf of their clients. So if you guys want to check them out, the link is in the description below. Yeah. Now, Rick, a lot of people have been watching, like even myself, Powell, and for the past year or two, raising rates, and now they put a hold on the last meeting for rate hikes, and they're calling for three rate cuts in 2024. Everyone in the silver and gold industry have been saying this is the moment we're waiting for the Federal Reserve to pivot, lower interest rates, and then silver and gold is going to skyrocket. Do you think that's the case? Will it initially take off, or is there going to be a lag? What do you see, Rick?
uh, Speculators who believe that this is nirvana need to think about three things. It might be that the Fed chairman is lying.
Mm,
It might be that simply jawboning about lower rates will re-inject confidence into the economy.
that's probably true.
Uh, and so I think that investors need to test their perception to the downside. I'm not saying he won't do it. I'm saying that the economy is surprisingly strong, given a doubling of interest rates, and he may not have to cut rates. I suspect that he is loath to cut rates because of the fiscal irresponsibility of Congress. So he will only cut rates if he has to. If he does have to, then really it's going to be a function of the market's response in various circumstances. To the extent that your listeners are holding speculative gold and silver stocks,
Mhm.
one thing that they need to consider is the amount of speculative capital that will go into technology rather than into gold and silver. So I think that people who, again, believe that rate cut is nirvana need to understand that they need to pay attention to the market's response in the near term to cutting. In the longer term,
Mhm.
while the real inflation rate stays much higher than the Fed acknowledges, while the compensation available to investors in savings products declines, I think what you'll see is in a normalized world, the real response in gold and silver would take place 2 years or 2.5 years after the rate cut.
Oh, wow.
I think you might see a move in anticipation, but
Right.
it's important to note that what really drives gold and silver is investor and saver expectation as to the maintenance or lack of maintenance of their purchasing power in US dollar terms. And that doesn't happen in 3 months. We've
Right.
had 40 years of a strong dollar and declining interest rates. And the idea that you can unlearn the lessons that you've learned in 40 years over 3 months or 4 months is fairly silly. If
Right.
I had a criticism, and I'm just going to be honest with you, if I had a criticism of the Wall Street silver market, the sort of Reddit market, it's that the orientation of the speculator has been very much narrative and very much in the short term.
Yeah, we want everything to happen quick.
And that's not what happens. I remember myself as a young person. I had trauma holding stock over a long weekend, which means I didn't make as much money as I make now,
Right.
being willing to own stocks for 3 years, 4 years, or 5 years. So it's important that your audience adjust their expectation to the probabilities, understanding too that their narrative is only ever a probability, not a certainty,
Right.
and adjusting both their psyche and their pocketbook to that reality.
So there's a massive possibility that in the short term, you'll see everyone after the rate cuts flood to like tech stocks or certain type of growth stocks. And then in the long term, maybe obviously not over 3, 4 months, but maybe over 3, 4, even 5 years, you'll see silver and gold show their growth. It won't be an
my
overnight thing.
my suspicion is that if we do see rate cut, that we are going to see strength in gold and silver equities simply because the faithful
Uh,
believe that happy days are here again. And I think, in other words, I think the market will in effect pass the collection plate through the choir, but we
yeah,
won't add to the congregation. Uh, Later on, when it becomes apparent to savers that the real rate of deterioration of the purchasing power of the US dollar is about 7% compounded. If you include stuff like tax in the cost of living,
oh yeah,
when people understand that their purchasing power is deteriorating by 7% compounded and they're being paid 4% or less on their CDs or 10-year treasuries, it's at that point in time, which corresponds to the end of 1975, early 1976,
hmm.
that gold, silver, and the precious metal stocks go absolutely ballistic. When the average saver looks at the government and says, those bastards got me again, uh, that's, I think, when the circumstance, the narrative that's driven so many people collides with reality.
Absolutely. And you have another boot camp coming up soon, Rick, and we're excited to talk about that. I think it's January 6th, correct? And the
That's
focus
correct.
the
I hope you'll be able to post a link.
Yes, we will actually right underneath in the description. If anyone wants to go to sign up, you can click it and go there. The focus will be development stage and pre-production mining. Is that what it is, this boot camp?
Yeah, that's correct. I believe right now on a risk adjusted basis, probably the cheapest stocks in the precious metal space are those companies that have proved reserves that are building mines. They're in the hyper boring phase. The
Yeah,
press release now is all around how many yards of concrete they've poured
right.
and various environmental permits and stuff like that. But what happens is over the 12 or 18-month construction period, if a company delivers a project on time, on budget, at nameplate capacity, it is very common, even without an increase in commodity prices, that that stock double or better.
Hmm.
The second thing that happens is they've de-risked the project. And so a potential acquirer would rather that the mistakes be made in the construction phase by the original owners rather than by themselves.
Yeah.
So as the certainty around the economic value of a project gets delivered to the market responds. And I think it's really important that prospective investors understand how to understand construction progress and how to understand the financial stack around mine development. So we're going to give you between 8 and 8.5 hours
Wow.
of online material, more than you can possibly absorb. But we're going to give you a year to absorb it, which means that you can replay the boot camp time and time and time again, which I do with all of my boot camps. We're going to charge you $99 to attend this. If for any reason whatsoever, you don't think that I've delivered $99 worth of value, email me and I'll give you your $99 back. Absolute
Wow.
gold-plated money-back guarantee. The risk is mine. The time is yours.
That's really nice, Rick. We're going to put a link in the description so anyone can sign up. It's going to be in the link below. But again, it's such a huge pleasure, Rick, you coming down to Wall Street Silver and speaking about everything that's going on. And hopefully, as the market develops, we'd love to have you back on.
I'd love to come back on as long as you'd like to have me. I've enjoyed my interaction with Wall Street Silver listeners. And by the way, any Wall Street Silver listener who cares what I think about their precious metals or natural resource stocks can go to my website,
Oh, yes.
ruleinvestmentmedia.com. List your stocks, and I will rank them 1 to 10. Absolutely no charge, absolutely no obligation. I will comment on individual issues where I think my comments might have value. And by the way, there's been major changes in some of the junior silver equities. I've had to revamp most of my rankings in the silver space. So once again, ruleinvestmentmedia.com.
And no pot stocks.
No pot stocks, no tech stocks, no crypto. Please, no crypto. No coins that an old man never heard of.
Oh, that's hilarious. Well, yeah, thank you so much, Rick. And then we'll put your website in the description below so they can contact you
Great.
too. Great.
Ivan, thank you so much. I appreciate this.
No problem. Take care, Rick.